Hello, everyone, and welcome to Art Central. This is our first public day, day 2 of the fair, after following yesterday's preview. I just want to welcome you to today's talks program. This is the first of 3 talks today that we are doing in collaboration with and who have been programmed by Asia Society Hong Kong Center. And I wanted to share and just introduce this talk and share with you that Asia Society have been the longest term partner of Art Central since our very first edition in 2015. We are so thrilled to have the support of Asia Society and to have them back again this year and to be doing this full day of program at Art Central. Our first talk today is with 2 people I've just met who I think that will really excite you and inspire you and really represent a level of Asia Society that I haven't had the opportunity to experience yet, but I hope to soon. And we're really branching out here and going global with Asia Society all the way to Tokyo and to Texas. And really excited for this first talk to welcome Yasufumi Nakamori, who is the Vice President of Arts and Culture and Director, Asia Society Museum, as well as Owen Duffy, who is the Nancy C. Allen, Curator and Director of Exhibitions at Asia Society, Texas. And this talk is moderated by Hein Yoon. So enjoy this talk now. Also come back at 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. if you happen to be here all day, and enjoy the talks presented by Asia Society Hong Kong Center. Thank you. I'll turn it over now to Hein, the moderator.
Very friendly. Yes. Okay, great.
Hello, everyone. And thank you, Corey, for the lovely introduction. I'm Hein, Assistant Curator at Asia Society Hong Kong Center. And as Corey mentioned, we have 2 out-of-towners here with us today. Owen Duffy from the Asia Society Texas Center and Yasufumi Nakamori from the Asia Society New York Center. Today, I think we're just going to talk about the Asia Society Global Network and arts and culture also on a global network. We'll talk about our past programming, future programming, how we're going to collaborate potentially as 3 centers. Yeah, sure.
Sure, I'm happy to. Thank you so much. I'm the VP of Arts and Culture of Asia Society, which consists of 15 centers, I think, including 3 centers with a real campus, which are New York, Houston, Texas, and also Hong Kong. So 3 locations do have actually museum. And, for John D. Rockefeller III, who established Asia Society in 1956, art and culture was a very important aspect of, his way of connecting the U.S. and also Asia. That has actually been expanded to really the Asia and the rest of the world in a way. So art and culture, policy, business, sustainability, technology, those are sort of like major lines of discourses. We are collectively and also individually engaging within this 15-center network. The one unique thing about actually Asia Society Museum is that we hold close to 500 objects, including 300 pre-modern Asian art. They were actually bequested by John D. Rockefeller III and also his wife Blanchette Rockefeller. So those are preeminent, pre-modern Asian collections. They are in the New York storage, as a matter of fact. And then starting in 2007, we began collecting modern contemporary Asian art. We are the frontrunners earlier, actually, in this century, producing a range of exhibition, particularly on contemporary Asian art. The terminology, Asian contemporary art, I think was coined by Asia Society creating a series of exhibitions starting, late 90s into this century. In particular, exhibition like Inside Out, New Chinese Art, which came out in 1998 to 1999. That was between Asia Society Museum in New York and PS1, in which we had like more than 30 artists from China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, and some Asian artists, Chinese artists in the US were included in that exhibition as well. So we have a long history of promoting, showing, and collecting art from Asia throughout history. So with that history, I think, by a Hong Kong center and also Texas center joining the force, we have been really creating, diverse and also, pretty deep exhibition discourse and also programs. So that's exciting to feel that, Asia Society has been an important force in the construction of this genre of contemporary Asian art. Yet, we haven't forgotten the importance of showing traditional, meaning pre-modern, pre-1900 Asian art. In New York, we had a number of exhibitions showing art from the, really the ancient time through present in exhibition like a comparative hell. That was up in New York a year and a half ago, and also went to San Francisco Museum of Asian Art as well. So we wanted to really thread various dots in history, not only showing art from one country, rather we take a position of Asia as a vast construct. And I think that probably goes into what we are doing in a modern contemporary space as well. So in that sense, actually, I'm very excited as a new vice president of arts and culture, what kind of collaboration, we could produce, among those sites. And the collaboration does not, stay just among 3 venues. We have a talk series in Tokyo Center. We have a wonderful, actually, lecture series in Paris, for example, on Asian art. So, this constellation of artists and thinkers and cultural leaders and supporters, I think that's a really global, and that's something really special about Asia Society, the way we engage Asian art. I think actually that's sort of like a framework for our, our way of engaging Asian art and Asian artists. In New York, since 1960, we produced more than 250 exhibitions in New York. And that was way, before the Met or Museum of Modern Art, the Guggenheim began, really showing and collecting Asian art. So from that perspective, I think, we have a place in the history. But then, I started this job only 7 months ago. I'm very new in this position. So I have been drawing this diagram to see which part of Asian art histories or art practice has not been presented as exhibition. So I'm trying to fill the gaps and which are the areas of Asian art we can expand further.
I think that's really interesting because Asia Society Hong Kong Center, we started our Female Asian Artists series. And so we exhibited artists like Fang Zhaoling, Pan Yulin, Irene Cho. And so I think this was what we were trying to revive, hopefully in the future, our Female Asian Artists series. So that was, I think, a diagram you mentioned that we drew, and we felt like female Asian artists weren't maybe as well represented in exhibition spaces. Yeah.
Actually, one of the lacunas in art history through exhibition discourse is that women artists have been often forgotten, right? So there are a lot of important, Asian women artists, including diaspora artists. They are in their 70s and 80s, into 90s actually. They were not given an exhibition yet in New York. So we are now identifying actually 3 women artists. We feel they need to be presented, in a solo exhibition format. Do you have any comments on sort of like how you feel this kind of lacuna in the history of Asian art?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really great point that you're bringing up. And I think that there's a tremendous possibility and responsibility that all the Asia Society centers, the three of us, really have when it comes to addressing this gap. Personally, one of the ways that I feel like I've been able to at least contribute with this is thinking about the expanded geography of Asia, right? And thinking beyond simply just East Asia, which of course is a critical region of importance. But here at Asia Society Texas and also at Asia Society, we follow the UN definition of the continent, which is quite geographically expansive, all the way from Turkey to Australia, and there's really a lot of rich possibilities when it comes to understanding, what the question and state is of art from this region and of this region and about this region. So one of the areas that is of great interest to me as a curator and researcher is modern and contemporary art from Nepal. It's a very, actually a very incredibly important country that acts as a buffer state between both India and China, two of the world's largest economies, and of course for generations has sort of acted as a rich center of cultural heritage in the region. And today that through line actually continues to the present day, and there's a very rich artistic scene happening right now in Kathmandu. Since I've been here actually in Asia Society, or I've been here at Art Basel, Hong Kong, and here for the week, you can find the work of artists from Nepal, both at Art Basel, Hong Kong, where Saren Sherpa has a tremendous installation right now, but also at Daikwan, where Karen Shrestha is in the Green Snake exhibition. That's really fabulous there. These are two incredible artists from Nepal. So for me, as a curator, I've been interested in sort of uncovering and maybe highlighting and emphasizing maybe these regions and these parts of the world that haven't quite had the same spotlight as some of the other countries and regions and nationalities that are so central to a lot of the narratives concerning art from Asia. And specifically, there's a couple artists that I've been really interested in working with. You'll see in the images as the slide rotates, we did a great exhibition with Saren Sherpa that was organized by the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts and the Peabody Essex Museum that we brought to Asia Society Texas. I also recently did a fabulous project with a Nepali modernist named Lane Singh Bangdel, who is actually one of the forerunners of modernism, not only in Nepal, but South Asia as a whole, and working as part of this Asian diaspora in Paris, in post-war Paris. It's really kind of fascinating figure. So I'm really glad that you brought this up, Yasufumi, because I feel like that there's a lot of ways to sort of go about sort of addressing, these gaps.
I think actually Asian diaspora artists actually, outside of Asia, in Africa, in Europe, I mean, Asia is all over the world now. So how we bring in that expansion and diversity and complexity of, being Asian, I think that's very important, isn't it? And I'm interested you mentioned, Nepali artists actually, outside of actually Nepal, I mean, the migrations and also transformation of those artists, their identities and practice as they settle in new location, I think that's very important actually aspect of, exhibition we could certainly make. I'm personally very interested in sort of like an intersection between Asia and Africa. So we want to do an exhibition looking at Afro-Asia, but instead of looking at the modern contemporary, we're looking at the pre-1900. So that's one history show we want to make.
Yeah, I think that's actually kind of really incredible thing to think about. And I want to also, where I'm going to go with this next comment, I'm going to kind of introduce it back to the both of you. Houston, one of the things that's really remarkable is, yes, it's in Texas, but one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that it's actually one of the most diverse cities in the United States. It is, depending on your metrics and how you measure it, it can be considered perhaps the most diverse city actually in the United States. Queens, of course, in New York, which is also where I used to work at St. John's University there, is also, it's probably the most diverse county in the country, but it just depends on who you ask and what metrics you go by. So for this reason, there's an incredibly rich a diaspora community in Houston that is absolutely integral to the fabric of what we do as both an art center, as a nonprofit, as a community space in the context of Houston. And I think that work is incredibly important, and sort of emphasizing, even in a place like Texas, which of course is in the media quite a lot for all sorts of different reasons. And it's a place that when you go to it, you leave with a much more nuanced understanding of what it's like to live there and be there. And so it's within this context that Asia Society Texas organizes its exhibitions. So we're sort of about bridging those through lines, those threads between, the continent of Asia. Asia as a geography, locally within the context of Houston. So what I'm also curious for the both of you is sort of what does Asia Society mean in the context of Hong Kong? It's obviously very different than the United States. What does Asia Society mean in the context of New York, which is very different from Texas? So that's kind of my next question for both of you.
I think Asia Society in Hong Kong might be a little different to Asia Society in New York and Texas because Hong Kong is in Asia, right? And Asia Society as an organization was first founded in the US, and it kind of returned to Asia through Asia Society Hong Kong. So I don't know if people in the audience members have visited our center. We're actually in Admiralty. It's like a 10-minute walk away. So please do go see our center and our exhibition that we have up right now. But we're actually on a heritage site. It was built in the 1800s, and our gallery space, the Chantal Miller Gallery, used to house ammunition during the war. So we've conserved all the original stone granite walls, which were built in the 1860s. And so it's a really special gallery space. We put on around 3 to 4 exhibitions a year. And right now we have Wilfredo Lam Homecoming, which is, Wilfredo Lam is an Afro-Cuban Cantonese artist. And so I think I also wanted to talk about Chinese diaspora linked to Wilfredo Lam later as well, maybe. But I think us as an educational art institution in Hong Kong, we do try to partner with like Art Central, other program partners like this to kind of highlight more of not just Asian artists living and working in Asia, but then again, Asian artists that are living and working outside of Asia. And we try to bring those artists to Hong Kong, to Asia.
I guess the one sort of like things I thought about is that how do you actually present the artists? They're not the Asian artists, but they were influenced by Asia, right? That's such an important part of it. So I think that's how I was so curious about intersectionality, Latin America and Asia, Asia and Africa. So, I mean, there are numerous artists actually, they're creating, I mean, someone like, Glenn Ligon, right? He's one, who's been really looking at East Asian ceramics in his practice as a part of larger practice. So how can we include someone like him to show in Asia Society space? I guess my answer is yes. So Asia, I think geographically, the way we looked at Asia has been expanding. Because now I think we include, Asia Pacific certainly, Australia, New Zealand, and they're kind of part of our geographical remit certainly. But then artists who are working, or being inspired by those regions can be also shown in our space. So, but having said that, the part of Asia we have not touched enough, such as the Central Asia. That's the one area I feel like we can do collectively together. West Asia, you and I have interest in West Asia certainly. We've done a couple shows on, Iran modernism at the New York space in last decade or so. So, there are parts of Asia which we must actually actively, engage. So this is a vast, actually, question. How we tackle, and then what's our strategy to create exhibition, create programs on every aspect of Asia in an expanded way? Do you have any strategy on that?
I kind of like this as a continuation of some of the conversations that we've started privately, but here in the context of a public forum, it always takes on an interesting dimension. But one thing that I would really think about is especially this idea of West Asia, right, and Central Asia as sort of really important because historically, because of course the Silk Road, which historically is how Asia connected, and actually how Asia continues to connect with itself in the present day. And so actually at Asia Society Texas, we're sort of in the beginnings of thinking about how we can approach this geography, and it's thinking beyond the discrete nation state, specifically to think more about interconnectivity across geographies. West and Central Asia is an incredibly important bridge between East and West, and in the context of the West, meaning the European continent. So we're starting to think about the idea of how the Silk Road can become a historic and conceptual signpost.
Yes. My name is Amal Khalaf.
Hello. Yeah, and I'm Alia, Swastika.
Yeah, and so we are two of the 5 curators who will be shaping the forthcoming Sharjah Biennial, which will take place next February in 2025. And we're here today to kind of share a little bit, and you're the first people to be able to hear a little bit about our process as a group of 5 curators from very, very different contexts that are really coming together to think about the possibilities of this biennial. Yeah.
So aside of two of us, me and Amal, we have also Natasha Jinwala from India, and then we have Zainab Oz and Megal Tamati Koerendel from New Zealand. So it's like all 5 women curators.
Yeah. And it's a super amazing honor to actually get to share space with, for me, so many incredible curators in one space. And I think part of our process of thinking about what it means to meet each other as curators that may share similar interests but have been working in very, very different geographies is so far probably 1 year of sharing, of discussions, of visiting each other in different contexts, starting to think about our differences but also our convergences. And doing that not just through our own curatorial methodologies, but also bringing with us artists and their practices and their processes into that. And like thinking about very organic ways through meetings coming in and out of Sharjah to start to find these organic ways of similarities and sharings.
Yeah, I think like me and Amal, we share also lots of commonalities in terms of our identity. In a way, we have like, I come from Indonesia, I'm based in Jogja, and somehow my practice is really much connected to the idea of community and, like local activism, feminism, and I think, yeah, Amal also, you're half Singaporean, so somehow like that's why we frame our talk today, like how we present the Southeast Asia and Asia in the context of Middle East and beyond, because like there is this idea also about diaspora, because Amal already live in New York in London for 20 years, so like this kind of like hybrid identity and the meeting point of different cultures.
Yeah, exactly. And so thinking through our own and like Alia's deep relationship and the pivotal role Alia's been playing in shaping what instituting art spaces, what creating a biennial in a space like Indonesia means, has like just triggered this like desire. I think very early on, you and I were talking about how important it was to start to think about what it means to bring Southeast Asian artists to the Sharjah context. Sharjah Art Foundation has already, for a very long time, over a decade, been thinking about its relationship or its positionality as this center in the Gulf that is making connections to Africa, to Asia already. And there have already been 3 curators we identified that have really focused on bringing Asian practices to the biennial already. So I think first we had Yuko Hasegawa.
In 2013, yeah.
In SB11. I think that was really one of the first times that artists from Asia were presented in the biennial. Following that, Yoonji Ju brought more artists from Asia and diaspora Asian artists to Sharjah.
Yeah. And then in 2019, Zoe Bat also, she gave quite a big space for the Southeast Asian artists to be presented in Sharjah. So we kind of like learning from previous trajectories and editions of the Sharjah Biennial. And I think for me, myself, when Amal actually mentioned about the Yuko Hasegawa edition, it was my first time coming to Sharjah. So that's how my relationship with Sharjah started, to visit Yuko Hasegawa edition in 2013, because it was kind of like the first time I have many of my fellow artists coming from Southeast Asia being exhibited in Sharjah. So I remember at that time Tintin Wulia, she was quite a young artist in like 2013, and now she became more established. But then, you know, like Yuko also already presented her works in this kind of like big biennial contact and with very experimental and more participatory projects. So I think since 2013, then I learned so much. I felt like very connected of what the Sharjah Art Foundation have been doing for the last 12 years. I've been connecting with them. So that's why, like, when I came this opportunity to work with the Biennale, then I really feel like this is somehow realized like one of my dream, bringing all these artists together.
Yeah, and I think we're really, as a group of curators, we've already had about a year now of starting to share our ideas, share practices, gather together, and we're starting to think through a series of very natural confluences that have started to come up in terms of thinking about the kinds of practices we're interested in and bringing, and the kind of practices and processes that we're interested in kind of being presenting together with each other.
Mm-hmm. So maybe now we haven't really defined one like big theme or the big narrative that's somehow shaping our ideas, but we share some keywords and ideas. Like for us, it's not only because we are all women, but also this idea of the feminine solidarity is really becoming one of the core of our curatorial framework. So, like, of course, like you will see lots of women artists practicing, but not only artists. I think lots of the artists also collaborating with all the women's activists or thinkers or you know, like even from the communities themselves. So also we will bring a lot of projects that related to technology. Like I think Zainab part, for example, really focusing on how the changing and the rapid technology change somehow changing also the way people live, and the ideological position, the economical power of those changing of technology really becoming part of her curatorial framework. And there will be lots of voices, songs, laments, and how this kind of rituals connected to our contemporary practices, and lots of performances as well.
Yeah, I think we're really thinking about what does it mean to create a biennial at this time where there's, especially in this context of Sharjah, where we're, you know, everyone around the world is facing so much grief around environmental collapse and war everywhere. And we're really asking this question, you know, what is the role of artists? What rituals, what kinds of stories, what kinds of holding do we need to take us through this moment? And I think this has been really part of shaping, you know, very naturally it came through from our different starting points, many artists, many practices that are speaking to these things. So really organically, these kind of themes have started to come through.
Yeah, I think from Amal's take also, we move also how the solidarity is also being somehow adapted to the context of art practices. So many of our projects will be somehow touching upon the idea, the form of collectivism and community. So for example, like the way I work, like my methodology in this edition will be somehow really much about transnational female collaboration. So within the biennial, now the artists, it's kind of like I created group of artists that working together under like similar narrative, or they share similar technique, materialities. For example, some artists working with weaving or textile or fabric that is now getting, you see lots of contemporary artists really using these materials, not only as in the context of aesthetic or materiality, but how to see this possibility of, you know, kind of like more feminine and like domestic material to be more political and as a symbol of resistance. So with the weaver, I work with 3 artists from different contexts, from Indonesia, from Malaysia, and from Istanbul, from Turkey, and then they will be making residency together to the island, like one of the remote island in Indonesia, and they will be somehow like doing, like research and residency with the local community, because this island very much known for the strong weaving culture. So there are lots of my project somehow creating this platform for different artists from different background to create something together. And this somehow connected also to the history, like the previous generation of artists, like Manifesto. So I will invite the Manifesto from, maybe it's not by, it will come later. So Manifesto is one of the earliest generation of female collective in Asia. So they based in Bangkok. They're still doing like the collective project until now. And they started this project in 1996, where they gathered many female artists, mostly from Southeast Asia, to do residency and like creating like a journey together to meet like local community in Thailand. So I'm so inspired by what they did in the past and how they somehow still connected for more than 30 years. So it's kind of like I want to replicate or to reenact this kind of methodology for the younger generation. So there will be this kind of collective projects in my methodology, for example.
And I feel like there's so much, I mean, it's such an exciting methodology, and each of us are bringing these practices, this kind of curatorial practice of like, for you, it's these amazing residencies, connecting different artists. Some of us are also creating spaces of gathering for different types of conversation for artists to meet each other and things to develop from there. But I feel like there's this learning, I feel. There's something for me as someone who grew up in the region, and from the Sharjah Biennial was like my school. Like I've been to every single one since 2005, and it was my way to read the world. There's something about this biennial as a curator that believes so much in collective practice for artists and collaborative ways of learning, co-learning, co-imagining the world together, that it's amazing to bring these practices from Southeast Asia, where collaboration, especially in Indonesia and Thailand, you have these collective practices. It's very much part of the DNA of the art world here. But it's something new, I think, to bring to the Arab region. And I feel like having these examples is actually sharing practices and kind of like offering the possibility for younger artists there to start to think and look to learn from Asian contexts.
But the collaboration is not limited just like between artists and like researchers or activists, because in your project, for example, like some of the artists, they will be also working with the community, either in Sharjah or in other part,
places,
right?
Yeah. So in a lot of my curatorial practice to date, I'm based in London, and I work a lot in London, but also in the Arab world. I'm really interested in kind of long-term commissions that support an artist to develop a relationship with a group or a community, and facilitate through creative practices, through workshops, something collective that speaks to often like socio-political issue. And with the context of the biennial, the time frame is a lot shorter, but that's definitely something that I'm trying to facilitate through the commissions, is thinking about artists from the region, from Southeast Asia, but also from the Arab region, to facilitate and develop workshops from a range of practices, from using theater, political theater, to doing walks and singing workshops and kind of learning indigenous songs and forgotten songs by women, doing gatherings around lament, and kind of facilitating group processes with communities on the ground in Sharjah, but also, in contexts like Libya, in Singapore, and in other places. And so, I'm really trying to think about how do we facilitate these collaborations, like you said, in this very expanded way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think also in the last, because I think each of us also having very strong connection with Sharjah for quite a long time. So we are kind of like quite familiar with the landscape and how do you feel Sharjah as a city and as a site of different, like it's very diverse community in Sharjah. So we also somehow responding to like the specific context that happened in Sharjah. For example, Sharjah is around the waterfront. It's very, really much like surrounded by what is, not ocean. Eh?
It's a sea, it's a gulf.
It's a sea, yeah. So there are lots of projects also will be talking about maritime culture, or also like your artists working also with the labor who work in the ships and the trade.
Yeah, I think something that really makes that connection between the Gulf and Asia and Africa is the Indian Ocean ontology. And a lot of us are thinking through these connections that exist through the sea, but also through the terrains around the Indian Ocean, and kind of the bodies and the goods and the ideas that are being exchanged historically and today. So I'm going to be working with an artist that's actually working with seafarers from the Philippines. We're working with a seafarer school in the Philippines, and we'll also be kind of collaborating with them through karaoke workshops whilst they're on the sea, and really thinking about bodies and labor and how they populate a port city like Sharjah. I'm also working with Voice of Domestic Workers. A lot of things have been written, a lot of things have been said about migrant labor all over the world. But Voice of Domestic Workers are an incredible union of domestic workers. I've been working with them since 2014. And I think instead of commissioning an artist to develop an artwork about a group of people, we're actually going to be working with the Voice of Domestic Workers, who have worked with many, many artists over the last 15 years on campaigns, working with artists in very different ways. They're going to actually be curating a section on how they, as domestic workers, as a domestic worker rights organization, have worked with artists or think about artistic practice. So I'm really interested to bring that conversation to that context in the Gulf as well. And really speak to, I think, make a more complex presentation of what it means to speak to a diaspora working community in the Emirates.
Yeah, I guess for us, it's very important to underline the positioning of the biennial as a space of meeting points and like for possible collaboration. So, because I learned, we visited lots of biennials, and sometimes I felt many of the artists, they know each other only during the display or during the opening, or, you know, like hang out together during the opening. So what I wanted to somehow open up is also the process, how they share the process to prepare the artwork. So during the Biennale itself, like the preparations and then the process, we will bring like more activities. I think there will be lots of workshop based and, you know, like more again community based. So for example, Manifesto, they will be creating like a tent where they will visit some of the women's community, different communities in Sharjah. Like there are lots like women's from the Pakistan area, from the Bangladesh area, and then they will create the tent together. So it's like growing installation. They will move from one area to another, and everybody will be coming up and building the tent together. Then the final one will be presenting in the exhibitions. So I think for us, it's really like looking into the possibility how Biennale is not only a space for looking art objects or, you know, like installations but now I think also after what happened after COVID and after Documenta, then it really changing the way looking into biennales, not only as something finished after the opening and people come to see, but many projects will be still growing during the process.
Yeah, and I was saying earlier what a privilege it has been to be able to work with the 4 other curators, and one of the things that we have been doing is kind of visiting each other's contexts and actually witnessing what the work you've been doing in Jogja and the last biennial you just did in October. It was really incredible to see this kind of long relationship that you've built with the 2 communities that you presented the biennial in, and being able to witness also your process. And it would be great to hear a little bit more detail about the kinds of processes you're doing with your artists, because some of them are here.
Yeah, I think, for example, we have one of the artists that I'm working with is Yim Yen Som from Malaysia. This is like we are revealing the project and the artist. So Yen Som practice really much working with fabric and textile and weaving all the narrative. Mostly she kind of like focusing on urban context, how building, like home building really much is not only about the physical one, but also imagination and memory. So yeah, I somehow connect Yen Som with artists from Indonesia, Salima, that been working a lot with the process and more like the discourse of archaeology and the humankind, the evolution of humankind. And Gunester called that so much also her practice is really based with making workshop with communities and create the stories together. So I put them in contact, and every month we have Zoom meeting, and then we sharing different practices. do you want to share how do you working in this process of collaboration?
Hi, I'm Yan Sam. Yeah, I'm no worse, so please be patient with me. So
Maybe a bit.
thank you so much for inviting me to the Biennial. Basically, we have Zoom meeting every month, and I think it's very interesting to join the Sharjah Biennial because it's a very new concept to me. Basically, my art practice is I work alone in the studio, and I never tried to cooperate with other people. And this time, 3 of us are gathered together, and we need to do a project together. And I think it's pushed myself to another level, and I'm kind of exciting for the outcome because when it's come to something experimental, like this exhibitions to me is very experimental. When it comes to experimental, it means that there is uncertainties in the project. And also it means that it's unlimited possibilities. So, yeah. Yeah, that's amazing to me
Yeah.
too. And what is amazing
And
is
why
3 of us-
residency is
Yeah.
important for you as well, right? Because we did before in Aceh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because 3 of us we are come from different background, and we share different knowledge during the meeting, and we will share the article and books that related to our art practice. And why residency is very important to me because for my work, for my practice, I need to visit the place and I need to observe the place for certain time.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone. Hello. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Hain from Asia Society Hong Kong Center, and I'm here with Stefan Lam, who's the founder and CEO of, he taught me how to say this, Le Pavillon Rouge des Arts Hong Kong. And we're here to talk about our exhibition that's up at Asia Society right now, which is a 10-minute walk from here, if you guys don't know. And we just opened last week, so it's been a very hectic, exciting couple of weeks for us. This is up until June 2nd, so please feel free to go visit. And today we're going to just kind of walk you through about introduce Wilfredo Lam to the audience and talk about some of the pieces that we have up in the exhibition. Do you want to maybe introduce yourself?
So, thank you for coming. My name is Stefan Lam. I'm living in Hong Kong. I'm the son of Wilfredo Lam, but don't really choose, have no choice. And yes, we talk now about the wonderful exhibition hosted by Asia Society here in Hong Kong, about the work of my father. My father was born in Cuba in 1902, and later on we can speak more in detail, but he was very well known for the participate to the movement of the surrealists, and he meet Picasso, he meet a lot of people, and he's now a little bit famous. And we are very proud, I'm very proud, because the Chinese origin we have is the first time we can show a panorama of the work of my father here in Hong Kong to you. The exhibition's name is Homecoming, is really making sense for our family. We are Lam family and we come home and we are really happy to welcome to our home, become your home.
Yes, so the idea of homecoming comes from the fact that Wilfredo Lam's father, so Stefan's grandfather, Lam Yam, was actually born in China, we think somewhere in the Guangzhou region, and he actually went to Cuba to live in Sagua La Grande, which is a small sugar farm village area around 5 hours drive from Havana. And so Wilfredo Lam was born in Sagua La Grande. And Lam Yam was actually a scribe and calligrapher. So that was in the 1800s, late 1800s. A lot of Chinese Cantonese laborers went to Cuba to work in the copper mines and the sugar farms. But Lam Yam was actually a community scribe. And officially in the records, he's noted as a carpenter. So with Lam Yam's kind of scholarly background, we think that maybe Wilfredo was influenced to starting to learn drawing at a very young age. So in the exhibition, we have a couple early self-portraits and early portraits that Wilfredo Lam drew from the 1920s. And I think it's really fascinating because he was from such a small village in Cuba, but he actually got a scholarship, right? A scholarship to study portraiture. So that's when he first ventured out to Europe in the early 1920s, and he went to Spain. Do you want to talk more about his years in Spain, maybe?
Maybe just before, I want to precise something, because we have a Chinese origin, but also an African, a Spanish origin. And very often, people said, why my grandfather, as an Asian, married a black woman? Isn't it not so usual? And in fact, it's very usual because a lot of Chinese diaspora goes to America or other country without wife. And at this time, we have not the right to marry the white. So you must choose the local one or maybe other color. And it's usual at this time, and it's really usual because the name of this kind of couple is named Blasian. Bla for black and Zian for Asian. So Blasian is very common at this time. You have a lot of Blasian in Jamaica and all over the south coast of America. So we talk about the Spanish period. Spanish period is interesting because till my father of 18, he was considering as a Chinese. At 18, as you said, he got a scholar, and he started to go to Madrid in 23rd years old, and he asked to have a passport. No Chinese consulate, no Chinese embassy at this time in Cuba, so he must ask to the Cuban authority. The Cuban authority delivered the passport, but one mistake appeared. The real name of my father is Wilfredo Lam. It means William and Frederick. But the administration, suddenly, the L disappeared. So, on a passport, my father saw, Wilfredo Lam. Such a unique name. It's nice. So I keep it. I'm appropriate my new name. And as Wilfredo Lam, he come to Madrid. In the studies was a very famous teacher, Fernandez Sotomayor. He teaches Salvador Dali and people like that. He studied at the Escuela de Bellas in Madrid. He was very influenced by the very great master like Velázquez, Goya, of course, and the modern for this time, Matisse. And he loved, because he loved exactly the Italian master too. First of all, we must know my father was a portraitist. And slowly but surely he moved because the influences of this the country and the masters. So in Spain, we have the Spanish Civil War in 1936. You want to say something on the Spanish Civil War? Continue?
Oh, the Spanish Civil War. So Wilfredo, during that time, I think he was forced to work. What exactly did he do during the Spanish Civil War?
Yes, Spanish Civil War. You know, the one thing is really interesting. My father worked not in the front line, but in the barrack of munition, arsenal, to do some grenade. Je sais pas comment on dit grenade, mais c'est pas grave. Some bomb. And he was intoxicated by the powder, and he go to the sanatorium nearby Barcelona. And at this place, he made a very famous painting for this time. His name Manolo Huguet. And Manolo Huguet said, the civil war now touched to the end. And for an artist like you, the best place you can have is Paris. You must move to Paris. And a very friend of mine, a good friend of mine, I can write a letter to recommend it to him. This friend have a name, I don't know, you know his name Picasso. Pablo, if you know the first name. But he's very, the first letter recommendation he got to go to Paris at this time.
So I think Wilfredo Lam moves to Paris in the late 1930s. And then around 1938, 1939, he almost immediately meets Picasso in Paris. And in our gallery space, we have a few portrait paintings of that period from the 1920s up until the early 1940s. And what was really interesting to see was that you can clearly see the human figures he drew kind of pre-Picasso and then post-Picasso. So after he meets Picasso, you can really tell the influences of Cubism because it's just so clearly Cubist, like the human drawings.
Effectively, in the first room, you have this Cuban, Spanish, and Paris period, and it's very evidence to see the evolution from the first aplat like Matisse and the color, and then after the African mask influenced by the Picasso. And very often my father said he's not so influenced by Picasso, but Picasso gave the catalyzer. He wasn't like a catalyzer. He gave the energy to go forward in his art. And Picasso, when he met for the first time, my father said something very strange. The first time I saw you, I immediately recognized somebody I know perfectly. I mean me. So he saw in my father a kind of brother of art. So it's very nice because it's the beginning of a really friendship between us, between them. Oh, gosh.
Yes, and Picasso was also a very important catalyst, I think, because growing up, Wilfredo Lam wasn't really in touch with his African heritage, right? And Picasso, having interest in African culture, African art, really opened those doors for Wilfredo Lam, and he started looking into African rituals and African masks, and that's when you can see the paintings really evolve into African art.
It's interesting to understand. At this time, my father met Picasso. For him, he's really the representative of the modern period, and at the same time, Picasso was very interesting by the African art. So you have a kind of mirror where each other can see the possibility of each other. It's interesting, and of course, Picasso say, "Do you know the African art?" And honestly, my father don't know really well. So at this time, we have a friend of mine, a very famous ethnologist. His name Michel Deris. And Picasso said to Michel, bring Wilfredo to the Musée de l'Homme to give the knowledge of the African, his roots, because my father, of course, have also African origin.
And then I think maybe we can talk about the early 1940s. So as we explained, after Wilfredo Lam moved to Spain, he moved to Paris because of the Spanish Civil War and after he got poisoned working with chemicals during that war. And then after he meets Picasso in the late 1930s in Paris, World War II breaks out. So Wilfredo Lam, with a Cuban passport, he gets kind of sent to Marseille. He's in Marseille in exile, and this is a very important time period for him because in Marseille he meets the Surrealist group. Could you tell us more about the Surrealist group?
My father always loved poetry, and at this moment, the Surrealism by André Breton, it's the start to begin. And André Breton is the leader of the Surrealism. He moved from Paris to Marseille because the France is split in two parts. the part with the German occupied by the German, and the other part is the a free part of France under the gouvernement of Vichy. And the only chance to escape from France is to take a boat from Marseille to US, United States. But it's not like now. You cannot buy a ticket directly. So he moved to Marseille, and during 8 months, he waited for a possibility to escape from Marseille, because we have the emergency rescue committee in New York, led by Eleanor Roosevelt, sent a guy, a very famous guy now, his name Varian Free, to save at the origin only the Jewish people, Jewish intellectual from the Nazism, but in fact much more. So he saved the artists, the intellectual for every country, and he spent a lot of time with André Breton, with Claude Lévi-Strauss, with Max Ernst, with Victor Brauner, with Hans Bellman, so and so and so and so. And surrealists love to play game, play card, play a lot of things, Cadavrexki. And it's a period of intense reflection and intense, because we never know if the next day the police knock on the door and you go to jail. So each day is maybe like a last day. And you see in the exhibition the famous Carnet de Marseille, Marseille notebook, and you can see clearly the change, the appropriation of my father in this new vocabulary. You have still he's still a portraitist, but not very. He still included some African and some influences from Picasso, but not too much. And slowly but surely, you can see now an hybridization of his art with some animals, some different from the Santeria from Cuba, appears in these works.
Yes. So being in exile during the war was actually a very important catalyst for him to start developing his painting style, and also being with surrealists and being exposed to that environment was really important for Wilfredo Lam. And if you've been looking at the slides and the paintings and the prints, you can see that he's really into these hybrid figures. They're kind of these women, men mixed with birds and horses, and that's when in the 1940s he starts developing the femme cheval. Could you explain what the femme cheval is?
Yes, when he left Marseille, he reached the French West Indies, Martinique, and he got this sort of quarantine, and he had only the right to do one time to the city of Fort-de-France. In Fort-de-France, he met somebody very important for him. His name is Aimé Césaire. He's a very famous poet in France. And he started to work together with the very famous book of Aimé Césaire, Cahiers d'un retour au pays natal. My father gave the illustration of the Spanish version of this book. Then he go back to Cuba because he's not allowed to go to the US because he's not exactly a refugee. That means the refugee from France, in France is the war, but in Cuba have no war. So for the US authority, it's not possible to him to go inside the US. So he stay in Cuba, and in Cuba, he reconnects with the ritual of Afro-Caribbean voodoo named Santeria. Santeria is a kind of a drum, and you have a pantheism religion with a lot of God, natural God. And the femme cheval, as you mentioned, is a very particular form of the work of my father, because femme cheval is mean a woman horses, the woman is the praetress, and you have the ritual of initiation of this praetress. The drum slam, and the woman, the praetress, start to dance, to be in trance. And when he's in trance, she becomes dancing like a horse, but a crazy horse, you know. It's very a possession ritual. And I think my father was very impressed about this ritual, but because he's an artist, he tried to translate with this knowledge he had in Europe. And you can see femme cheval like classic position, classic posture is a mix of all my father was at this time in contact.
Yes. So actually at our gallery right now, we have one of my favorite paintings, Femme avec Oiseau. And that's one of my favorite paintings. I think you'll see later. It's a gray painting from 1942, I think, 49. And it's a woman with a horse head sitting very noble regally. Yes, with really great posture. And that was actually a former collection of novelist Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So that was a little fun fact I learned about. And I think after the 1940s, maybe we can talk about the 1950s and his experimentation with abstract art and the Bruce series.
Yes, you have some. We try to do, as I said, on each room a panorama of different period of my father. We have a nice Bruce in the room number 3. Bruce is named Bush. His name. The idea of the Bruce is to do something you cannot really see. It's a completely different approach, but in the same time. I mean, it's very abstractive. My father is not do a kind of abstract like this, but you can recognize in some points the personage of my father, the personage my father do usually. But you know, in this time, he was very influenced by the Cuban Revolution, and the Bruce is supposed to be the bush where the soldier and the people hide. So for him, maybe he tried to hide a part of him behind this brush.
So that's Femme avec Oiseau, one of my personal favorite paintings, if I'm allowed to have one. And then I think in the next slide, we'll probably see...
This one is also a femme cheval. And you know, my father do 3 major retrospectives, one in the Centre Pompidou, second one in the Reina Sofia Madrid, and the third in the Tate Modern. Each got a different theme, is a retrospective, but have different highlights. The highlight of the Tate Modern is the woman